I'm making one of you. It's his birthday. Happy birthday, Clay. Clay is 63 today. And I'm going to let you guys learn a few things about my Clay. First of all, he's working on what kind of book?
Sudoku.
Clay is the fastest Sudoku player you will
No,
ever
I'm
know.
not. I'm not that fast.
He says no, but he'll take the newspaper one and just get it done in minutes. He is really quick at Sudoku. How much did you weigh when you were born?
12 pounds, 9 ounces.
And you were what, the third largest
Third
baby?
largest baby in Auburn Hospital, and my mother had the mumps when she was pregnant for me.
And then what happened with your dad when you were born?
My dad come to visit us in the hospital. Mom and I were on different floors. The nurses were all fawning over me, because I had long, curly hair.
What color was that?
Same color it is now, auburn red. And they were fussing over me, and Dad come down after visiting Mom on the upper floor, came down to maternity, or the nursery, to see how I was doing, and then the nurses said, well, because they thought my mom died, and they said they felt so sorry for the baby, and my dad said, he'll be okay, he'll be fine. The nurses thought he was a mean, miserable old crotchety man because his wife had died giving birth, and he said, no, she ain't dead, she's upstairs with the mumps.
So, and I'll tell you a few more things about Clay you may not know. His favorite color is unusual. What color is your favorite color?
Orange.
And
Green.
orange and green. He used to have a rat for a pet.
Had a tarantula for a pet. I had a ball python for a pet. I had 2 emus as a pet. And peacocks I had for pets. I had a lot of different pets.
He has raised probably every farm animal you can
But I
think of.
couldn't have any of them until I got to be 13.
Yes, tell him your story on when you first got started in chickens.
Well, I've always been fascinated with chickens from the time I was like 6 or 7 years old. And I asked my dad if I could have some. And he said, no, not until you can afford to take care of them. Well, I always thought he was kind of mean for saying that to a little kid, but he was right. I mean, once I got to be 13, I worked at the school, after school, doing janitorial work and stuff from the summer youth corps and after school work. And I saw an ad in the paper for white leghorn chickens, $1 a piece. And I asked Dad if I could have some. He says, sure. It's your money, not mine. So he set me up. He took me over and got I think I bought 15 of them. Something like that. Yeah, I think it was like 15. And he took me to the feed store, and I bought some laying mash and some cracked corn scratch feed. And that's when it all began, when I was 13. So being 63 now, what's that tell you? 50 years?
Yes, 60 years.
Huh?
60.
Wouldn't be 60, I would have been 3 years
Oh,
old.
I'm sorry, 50. Sorry. Okay, and also, have you raised horses?
Well, they weren't race horses, they were,
No, raised horses.
raised horses.
I'm
Yes.
talking about
My dad.
kind of horses they were.
Hobby. The horses, my dad's hobby was horses. He liked to work horses, because he used to go to the horse polls where they banned them because it was cruelty to the animals. Animals loved doing it. You would hook the horses to a harness and they'd pull a plate of metal with different weights of stone. They were started out as stone years ago, but then they went to like concrete weights. And the strongest pair that went the farthest won the prizes. And those horses would be revered as the best in the county or state, and that's when people come and buy them, and you get a good price for them. But then animal activists, like they always do, come in and make it sound like they're being mean to the horses, so then the horses were just left out to pasture and just went their day-to-day thing of eating their hay and whatever they do. It was almost like the horses were kind of sad because it was like they lost their whole incentive to live the way they didn't have anything to do. Because my dad used to hook them to the wagons and take everybody for a ride in the wagon, or in the winter it'd be the sleigh. And the horses loved it because there had attention being put to them.
Now, did you ever win any awards for raising pigeons?
Yes, I raised pigeons, and I have
A whole bunch of blue ribbons.
and I've got a couple of plaques in the garage too. They're hanging up.
So
Best German toy and things like that.
you used to raise rabbits, pigeon, emu. Did you ever raise an emu?
Had 2 of them.
And what do you think? Are they safe? Are they dangerous? I've never had an emu because I met you after the
Depends
emu.
on how much time you spend with them. Now, I had Big Bird and his ugly girlfriend. I call her UG for short, ugly girlfriend. Which it ended up being the opposite, because Big Bird ended up being the female and UG ended up being the male. So,
But didn't one of them, when you went to catch them up, didn't one of them kick you by accident?
yeah, you have to, when you deal with emus, you have to put a sock over their head and you get behind them and steer them to where you want to go. Well, at that time, I was only like probably in my late 30s, and we were trying to catch them up because I had I was going through my divorce, and I had way too many animals I had to cut back, so I got a hold of a petting zoo because
Well, you didn't have to give. You
I
decided
didn't have to. I decided to.
because he was working, and he said, "Well, I
didn't
can't."
have any time to spend with them.
So he decided to.
I decided to give them to a petting zoo. And when we were catching them up, I got kicked in the chest by Yuji
And that was.
because they were grabbing onto him, and he brought his feet up, and they've got a foot about this big around. And they can kick hard. Kicked me right in the chest, left me a bruise right here.
And did you ever ride a cow?
Yeah, we had when I was growing up, I was probably like 15 or 16 at that time, and my dad bought my brothers 2 cows. One was a bull and one was a heifer. And my brother Rick is the one that owned the heifer. My brother Mark, his bull ended up with the scours and didn't survive. But the heifer lived a good long life being out in the pasture, horse pasture with the horses. So as she was growing up with the horses, she must have thought she was a horse, because when the horses would break out of the fence, she'd go with them. Run all over the neighborhood. We have to chase horses. I hated it because we had to chase horses just about every night after school. The big field out across the road.
Did you ever break a horse?
Oh yeah, we broke a couple of horses.
No. Did
I
you?
broke Star, which was my horse, and I broke Red. And the one I tried to break was he was a stallion pony. My dad was a logger, so he had some logs in the horse pasture. And we used to ride the horses in the horse pasture. And I was trying to break this little stud horse, or stud pony. And he'd get running with you on his back. And he'd get right up to them logs, and he'd put the brakes on, and you'd go over his back and onto the ground.
So I hear you used to sleep in the trees.
Only when I'd say back when I was probably about 14 or 15, we used to pick cherries over in North Wolcott. Roy and I did, my next door neighbor. And it would take you a good couple hours. Take you a couple hours to ride over there on bicycle. So we'd get over there in the morning, pick a bunch of cherries, get our pay, and instead of riding all the way home after picking cherries all day, we'd just stay right there in the orchards till the next morning.
I heard that you met the most beautiful girl in the world on the internet, and you rescued her and her son. How did that happen?
I don't know. Cheryl Teague's only. She only emailed me back. No, I met Ruthie on the internet.
And what did I say on my page?
I read a lot of pages and looked for all the red flags, and the one that caught my eye the most was Ruthie's.
And what did you had prayed?
Yeah, I prayed the Lord that if I didn't meet anybody by July 1st, that I was just going to continue with life as it is and be a bachelor the rest of my life. After a couple of bad romances.
And what did I write on my page?
Pick me, pick me.
And where did I tell you to take me on our first date?
Oh, that was a crazy thing.
I was really naive.
I asked her if she wanted to go to the zoo because you go to the zoo, there's people all over the place. You don't have to worry about being alone with somebody. She wanted to go to the park. Now, first thing you think about when you're in the park is there's so many places you could hide the body. So that was kind of a red flag there. But she wanted to go to the park, so we went to the park.
I was just naive.
We walked for a mile or two. And then we got back to the car. The bad weather started rolling in. And it started to rain. So we sat in the car. We put the seats back and took a nap. Till the rain stopped. And then we got out and did a few more things. And that was our first date.
I heard you kind of got a son. And what is your...
He was your...
How does my son and you, how was your relationship?
Well, it was a little rocky at first, but he was a 19-year-old.
But how does it is now?
Now he will call me instead of her.
And how many times a day does my son call you? Every day.
Yeah, every day. Usually about nap time.
And he's like...
We gotta shut this phone off at nap time because just about the time I fall asleep, somebody calls.
Well, who's
or
the
text
son?
messages.
My son calls him all day long.
Dad, I love the boy, but I have to have my nap or I get grouchy.
Yeah, but you and Rusty are close.
Yeah, we're close. I love him.
Very close.
I love him.
Yep, they're very, very close. It's cute as anything to see how close they are. That just shows you the kind of man that Clay is. Because Rusty and I just about, next to God, we worship Clay. We love him. I shouldn't say worship.
You don't worship me. You worship
but we
the
love
Lord.
him. We love him. Because he's been a great guidance. And when my family, because I got lots of sisters, has trouble, who do they call?
Ghostbusters.
They call Clay. Clay! So he's got sisters he didn't have before. And
I had two sisters.
No, but you have sisters in my family that kind of like...
I had...
they love Clay. My family loves Clay.
Chrissy and Sylvia.
He's got his own sister. He knows, though. He's very loved. He's a very loved man. Oh, okay. Okay, Clay. What about working? I hear you don't like to work. You've never kept a job. No, he's worked since the time of...
I retired from my job.
Clay he worked his whole life. You used to be a manager at a fertilizer place. He used to work...
For a season.
He used to work in food... Well, you worked in food packing and troll motor.
Out of school, I went right to Comstocks.
How many years did you work there?
I worked there 2 years. And then went up to Seneca. Worked in the warehouse there, putting labels on cans. And stacking, using the palletizer, stacking cans on pallets. And then I went from there to the fertilizer plant. Worked there for 2 years. Was a manager there for 1 year. because they fired my boss and I was number one in there, so they put me up into that position, which I hated. And then I went from there to back to Comstocks. Fruit packing, cherries, apples, peaches, and blueberries. Making canned pie filling. And they hired me as a mechanic helper. And the mechanic that they had me working under had no mechanical skills. He didn't know a crescent wrench from a screwdriver. So they kind of moved him out after Cherry Pack and moved me up there. So I was a closing machine mechanic, which closing machine is you take the can, they fill the can, and the machine that puts the cap on it and rolls the seam on the edge of the can. That's the work I did for 22 years. And then they closed that factory, and I was unemployed for first time in my life for about, I'd say, 3 months. And I went up to Williamson to Mott's, and I put in an application, and by the time I drove back home, my wife said, "You got to go to Mott's, go back to Mott's," because
His ex-wife.
my ex-wife said, "You
It
have to
wasn't
go
me.
back to Mott's because
But I would have done the same thing.
they hired you and they want you to start immediately." So I drove all the way back to Mott's, which I think was like a Wednesday or Thursday. They said,
Were they Mott's then?
yes, they were Mott's. And they said that they wanted me to come back the following Monday to start work Monday. And I'd be working in the yard, mending boxes. So I was mending apple boxes for the first season. And then they brought me inside to work assistant mechanics. I worked for that assistant mechanics for about 3-4 months, and then they laid a bunch of people off, so people from the lower maintenance projects had to come up and work in the maintenance department, so it kind of booted me out of that department, so I had to go on to sanitation. And I was on sanitation for about a year, and then there was an opening to sign up for. Well, there was 100 and I think there was 100. They called them Mott's temps at that point, and they were laying off all the Mott's temps, which I was one of. And it was during one of their labor disputes. So there was a lot of people that worked with some of us that didn't want us to leave. They wanted to keep us. So during their negotiations, they said they wanted to keep 9 Mott's temps. And they weren't going to ratify the union contract unless they made those 9 Mott's temps full time. So I was just one of them. It got down to 20 of them or so, 21 of them, which I was still in there. And I was still worried I was going to lose my job. But apparently they must have liked the way I worked because I was one of them that they kept on. And I made full time, and I worked there for 16 years after that, after I made full time, until it was time to retire.
And what did you tell me about retirement when we talked about it?
I told Ruthie, I said, I can't do this anymore. I just went through I had a lower abdominal infection. I had to go through operations for that. Some of you may have remembered that from our past videos. And then I had trouble with my hip. And I went and had that all checked out, and the doctor said that my hip bones were slowly deteriorating, and that if he could do the operation any time, but it was up to me. He said, you can deal with it. I can do the operation now, a week from now, a month from now, or 10 years from now. It was totally up to me. And I said, well, which surprised Ruthie, because I said, well, I better get it done because I don't want to go through 10
I was really surprised.
I would be limping along, and I'd have to sit down about every 2 minutes because my hip.
Well, I knew what he was in for, so I was surprised that he would take the plunge. But what did I do when you retired? I cried. I was so happy that he retired. I cried.
I've had nothing but trouble with this hip since the operation too. I got it done November 1st of 18, and I wasn't